ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಕಾಣತ್ತಾ? ಕನ್ನಡಕ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ತಿದ್ರೆ
ಹತ್ರದ್ದು ಕಾಣಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಎಸ್.
ಕಾಣಿಸುತ್ತಾ?
ಯಾ ಯಾ ವಿ ಲೆಫ್ಟ್ ಅಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಣಾಯಾಮ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್.
So pranayama alva. So pranayama is said. You see, most people think that pranayama is only a set of breathing exercises, said that. That's why the word prana as is usually associated with the breath. But pranayama has a deeper meaning. The word is comprised of two roots, prana and ayama. We already discussed the traditional meaning of prana, which is life force. Ayama means expanding. Ayama, another meaning of the word ayama is disciplining or putting a boundary. Normally, we are not cognizant of the way that we are breathing. So it just happens naturally with the flow. But when you give an ayama to it, you put a structure to it. Ayama also means structure. So you put a structure to your breath. So that's why breathing exercises gives you a particular structure to the breath. So pranayama means expanding life force, I said. Right, said Daji. It has nothing to do with breathing per se. Whenever we receive transmission, we are receiving the very highest force into our hearts. From there, it expands throughout the entire system, expanding life force. So this is how yogic transmission fulfills the objective of pranayama. So how is pranahuti and pranayama related to one another? This is a question for you in the exam. Okay. Pranayama means expanding life force. So that's exactly what happens when we receive pranahuti also. The only difference is pranahuti is more subtler than the prana. So prana is more grosser. Pranahuti more subtler. That's why pranahuti is also called as pranasya prana, the life of life force. Okay. And this is the reason that breathing exercises are not part of heartfulness practice, I said. Yes, when we have access to transmission, pranayama becomes redundant, said Daji. But doesn't mean that transmission and pranahuti are equivalent to one another. I have read that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa transmitted spiritual will to Swami Vivekananda, I said. Yes, said Daji. It's true. Swami Vivekananda was also able to transmit, but he never spoke about it. There are other examples to be found as well. Transmission is present in certain strands of Sufism as well. There's a, there it is known as Tavajjo. So please underline. Transmission is also called as Tavajjo. There is mention of it in Tibetan Buddhism as well. There are also references to it in certain yogic texts such as Yoga Vasishtha. You see, transmission does not belong exclusively to any one particular path, just as God does not belong to any one particular religion. If a person is completely merged in the source, they can distill their divine essence and distribute it to others. So that's transmission. Please underline this, the last sentence. If a person is completely merged in the source, they can then distill the divine essence and distribute it to others. That's what is the role of the master. Distill the divine essence and distribute it to others. Again, you can see 3D. Distill the divine essence and distribute. 3Ds. So next, Bharat will ask, this fellow, wherever he sees 3D only. But it is extremely rare to find such a person. Great personalities such as my guru have hardly existed throughout history. You see, if a guru is not completely merged in the original source, they may still not be able to transmit. But in that case, they'll what are they transmitting? Only their own limited state of being. So remember, you can still transmit. If you are merged in the source, you can actually transmit the essence of the source. If you're not merged in the source, you will still transmit your state of being. There's still transmission, but it's not the original transmission or the transmission from the source. That's why Daji earlier said we keep transmitting different things. We keep transmitting sound, we keep transmitting vibrations. There are so many things that we transmit. But that's not from the source. Transmission is something which comes from the source. And for that, sir, you require 3D. For something to be brought from the source, you require 3D. Only their own limited state of being. Such a person is not connected to anything higher than themselves. And even if they are connected to something higher, their transmission will be limited to the extent that they have not dissolved themselves in God. So, this is another thing. Their transmission is limited to the extent that they have not dissolved themselves in God. This is also one of the reasons why you feel difference when you take sittings from different preceptors. Last sentence. So that the extent to which the perceptor is dissolved in God, the extent to which you will get a different kind of transmission. So that's why the work from different perceptors will be different. It will be felt differently. And that is true also. You cannot feel the work of different perceptors in the same way. Although they're all tapping into the same source, which is the transmission, which is the master who is the source of transmission. However, the way that it actually passes through them and reaches the Abhyasi will be different. Okay. Now you might every perceptor is a conduit for transmission, but to what extent they have actually nullified themselves to better become a better conduit is what determines how the work occurs. The more I is there, the individuality, the less the transmission flows. The less of the I, more the transmission flows. Can you see that? So the job of the perceptor is also to work on themselves, to nullify their own individuality. Now, when you nullify individuality, to the extent to which you nullify the individuality, then that is the extent to which you have merged in God. More the merger in God, less the manifestation of individuality. So that last sentence gives you a clue regarding why does the work occur differently with different perceptors. Even if they are connected to something higher, their transmission will be limited to the extent that they have not dissolved themselves in God. And that limitation will inhibit the transmission's effectiveness. Underline this. Of course, said Daji. You see, in the deepest level of samadhi, our state resembles the original state that prevailed before we came into being. At that state, there was no movement, there was only stillness. But in that stillness, there was immense potential. So, in that stillness, there was immense potential. All possibilities are there in that stillness. In silence, all languages are embedded. In language, there is no silence, but in silence, every language is embedded. The silence can actually manifest into any language. That potential to manifest in any language is embedded in the silence. That's why you can communicate more in silence than in language. Because all languages are embedded in that. That's why we still like the Charlie Chaplin movies. We still like Donald Duck, Mickey and Mouse, uh, Mickey Mouse. The serial is coming, no? So what is the other one?
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry. See, if it doesn't matter. Every person of every age will like this because there is no language involved. Provided there was language, then you will actually find it harder to relate. Some people will like, some people will not like. When there is no language, then almost everybody will like. And when there is no meaning, Tom and Jerry has no meaning. Donald Duck has no meaning. They are not trying to teach you any particular thing. They are just there to show some random things happening, and you enjoy that random thing. Because you know the reality behind that randomness is you yourself. When lot of meaning is given, the reality behind you is not you. When there is lot of randomness playing out, what is there behind it? The reality of the person who is watching is there behind it. So they actually enjoy their own reality, and they think that they are enjoying Tom and Jerry. That is what happens. I keep telling projection of reality, no? So when you watch Tom and Jerry, it does not cater to your intellect. Do you think that you can actually use your intellect while enjoying Tom and Jerry? Try it out tomorrow. Today you can watch one more episode of Tom and Jerry after a long time and see whether you are actually using your intellect to watch Tom and Jerry. Anything that you do where you use your intellect less, you actually enjoy it more, right? You go on dance in a dance club. Do you think that you are using your intellect? No, but you seem to enjoy it. The less the intellect, the more the enjoyment, so to say. Why is that? Because you have put your reality behind it. And the intellect sometimes actually, what you say, filters the reality to a certain extent. Though you feel that it's less real. That's why intellectual people find it very hard to relate to God. So to keep your intellect quiet only, we ask you not to think anything during meditation. Intellect is based on thinking. If there is no thinking, there is no goal directed thinking. Intellect is goal directed thinking. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we have no goal in meditation. We have goal in meditation. We are moving towards the source of divine light. That is the goal. But we don't think about it. Can you see all these nuances? See, more and more perceptors. Two new abhyasis are coming today. You know why? Oh, this preceptor is the only fellow who is going to tell me to watch Tom and Jerry, watch movies. So I'll go to him only for sitting. So two new fellows are coming. Everything that we do has a lesson for us. We are doing it without even being aware of what is it that we are doing. Spirituality actually gets you an awareness to know what exactly are you doing, which aspect of you are active, which aspect is not active. When are you feeling more happy and settled in life? When you are feeling distressed, the more you use the intellect, the more you feel distressed. Now that doesn't mean to say intellect has no role. It has its role, but we have to be selective. Okay. So that's why Daji says the prayerful suggestion. This is also one of the examination questions. Correct thinking, right understanding, and honest approach to life. This is examination question. Please write all the 4 or 5 prayerful suggestions and expand. So this is a section A question for you. ಭರತ್ ತಲೆ ಕೆರ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸದ್ಯ ನನಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಇಲ್ವಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಬರ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ in a way Bharat is the only one who is actually enjoying all our discussion because he doesn't have a overhang of exams. All the other three have a overhang of exams. All the people who passed SNP2, no, we have made them mentors for the SNP3 candidates. It's like learning from the senior, immediate senior. And they are all, when I was speaking to them yesterday, they were all saying that it is so different to read the same book without the overhang of the exams as compared to having a overhang of the exams. We are now feeling more free when we read. We are going to more deeper levels than when we read with the mentees. So that is what is happening. So it will be wonderful to read without the need to give an exam. But when you have a need to give the exam, you also need to be a bit more focused. You have to use the intellect, right? Because in the exam, you have to remember and write it. So intellect is necessary anyway, in that way. That's why you see a lot more smile in Bharat, more than any of you. All the three of you are more serious than Bharat. Anyway, good. See, again, this is happening right in front of our eyes, but we don't see it. We don't see it because we are not aware of it. So expansion of the awareness is what the fundamental thing that meditation does. Everything that is happening to you in a day-to-day basis, you it will acquire more and more sense of reality. Then that limitation will inhibit the transmission's effectiveness, I said. Of course, said Daji. You see, in the deepest levels of samadhi, our state resembles the original state that prevailed before we came into being. At that state, there was no movement, there was only stillness. But in that stillness, there was immense potential, there was immense energy. When that energy is set into motion, we recognize it as the original force, as Adi Shakti. Yogic transmission is the original force of the Adi Shakti. That's why we had recently had a Adi Shakti Mahotsav last year. You remember? It's in relation to this. It's in relation to the transmission. Adi Shakti Mahotsav. It is the Adi Shakti. Only the original force can bring about the original state. Underline that. Only the original force can bring about the original state. In fact, an even better term than the original force would be forceless force. You say transmission has an effect but causes no reaction. Again, underline. Difference between transmission and uh, force. Transmission is a forceless force. It has an effect, but it does not cause any reaction. But force causes a reaction and has no effect. When you berate somebody, they react. But is there any effect? Does that intense scolding change them? Force always creates reactions. Only love can create an effect without causing a reaction. Due to transmission, this loving, forceless force, we are able to regain our original state of union with the source, which is the very definition of yoga. So, in order to reach the ultimate state, the transmission we receive must come from the ultimate level. I said, yes, said Daji. And only a person who has evolved to become identical with that ultimate state will be able to activate the source in the form of yogic transmission. Here, Lalaji made a key innovation. He discovered a method by which a person who is completely merged in the source can prepare others so that they become vehicles or conduits for his own transmission. This discovery is what allows us to have so many thousands of volunteer heartfulness trainers around the world, each imparting transmission on the Guru's behalf. So, this is Lalaji's innovation. So, people used to have the power of transmission, but there was no method in which the transmission power could be used for the betterment of common man. So Lalaji invented this method where you train trainers to become conduits for his power. So heartfulness trainers are conduits for the Guru's transmission. I said, yes, said Dashi. The Guru prepares them and works through them. A trainer can even be a novice meditator, but their transmission still equals that of a person who prepared them, who enabled them to impart transmission. But of course, this is a caveat in the previous page. You remember that sentence that we read? It is limited to the extent that they have merged in God or they have not merged in God. So you have to take both these things together. How transmission works from through anybody, through any preceptor. In my view, that this is a remarkable step in the history of spirituality because a mere beginner can now do the very same spiritual work as an evolved personality, and the Guru is also a conduit in this process because really it is nature's process. Transmission is an aspect of nature's evolutionary work with humanity. So Guru is also not the owner of transmission. Transmission is already present in nature. The Guru distills it and imparts it to the transmitter, the perceptor. The perceptor then imparts it to the disciple or the abhyas. That's how it is, like a sequence. So it comes from the source, which is the nature. From there, it is distilled by the Guru. Then from the Guru, it comes to the perceptor. From the perceptor, it comes to the abhyas. This is the sequence of flow. But in that case, shouldn't we receive transmission automatically without having to meditate? I asked. Because nature is everywhere, then we should be able to receive transmission. A farmer must prepare his field if he has to be benefited by the rain, Daji said. Nature is as it is, so we attune ourselves to it. That is why we practice. So, in other words, when we practice meditation, we are preparing the field of our heart. to receive whatever is there already in nature. Okay. Now, the water particles are there everywhere, all the time, in all seasons. It's only during the rainy season we get more rain. But the water particles are there everywhere. Even in a desert, there is a lot of water particles. They now built machines where you can distill water particles and convert it into water. You can get hundreds of liters of water per day, even in a desert, dry desert. So in other words, the water particles are there everywhere. We are not able to see and feel it. Of course, now it is raining in Bangalore too heavily, so we are able to feel the chill because the water particles have become too much now. It's become cold actually. But the point is, they are there all the time. So, like the machine distills the water particles into water, likewise, the transmission is there everywhere. So, we require somebody to distill it and give it to our heart because we are not able to distill ourselves. When we are able to distill ourselves, then when we meditate, wherever we meditate, we get the transmission. It doesn't matter where we meditate. It's like you developing an independent ability to read a book and understand. Initially, when you are still high school, somebody has to explain it to you. Then you can understand it, grasp it. But once you develop an ability to understand it yourself, then there is no need for somebody else. Wherever you take the book, you can just read and understand wherever you want to sit. So you can sit and read the book anywhere you want. Likewise, you can sit and meditate anywhere you want, and you will still be able to get the transmission. Can you see the correlation? So till that time, we require the perceptor to give the transmission to the. Okay.
I have one question. When you say that the transmission has come from source and the transmission is everywhere, the soul inside us has also come from the source, na? So that also has a transmission. Why don't we use that energy? In fact, we rely on.
We just now spoke in the previous class about the root. You remember in summer
Mhm.
season, the plant appears to have almost died out, but it is still drawing some amount of water from the root, from the earth. That is what sustains it. The moment it rains, a new breath of life comes to the plant. It will start kind of blossoming. New leaves come, new fruits, flowers come, everything comes. So we are always tapping into that energy. I told it as energy. Our soul is not the source. Soul is like a secondary transmitter. The soul is the ultimate, the supreme self. The soul is like the higher self. Okay. The soul is part of the supreme self. So it does not have the same capability as the supreme self. The difference is like the difference between fire and spark. The fire and spark both are same. The spark is an output of fire. But the spark does not have the same power as fire, right? But the quality are the same. Both of them are bright, both of them contain heat. But the fire can burn, a spark cannot burn. In other words, it is limited in quantity. Quality wise, they are both the same. Quantity wise, they are different. Now, if you go on blowing air to the spark, what will happen?
It will ignite again. It will ignite again.
It will become fire, right? If you go on blowing air to the spark, it becomes fire again. That's exactly what happens. We are like the spark of divinity. If you go on blowing air to this spark of divinity, it becomes the fire of divinity. Then we become the center. All spiritual gurus are nothing but fire of divinity. That's all it is. They become the center. Now, who can become the center? Now, you tell me. Is there any restriction on anybody becoming a fire? There's virtually no restriction. Any human being can become a fire because every human being is a spark only. That is why it's important to remember the center is everywhere. It can manifest in anybody at any time. There is no restriction. If you think of the center being somewhere there, there is a restriction. But center is everywhere at all places. It can manifest as a fire at any time of its choosing. Then the question comes, how does it choose to become a center? It depends on us. If you allow it to become the center, it becomes the center. If you don't allow it, then it will not become the center. It will just be as a spark only. You are undergoing meditation to convert the spark of your higher self to become the fire of Supreme Self. That is what you are doing in meditation. Okay? In other words, you are still drawing energy from your soul all the time, whether you are aware of it or not. But it is not called as transmission because it is not coming from original source. It is coming from a secondary source. The original source is the center. Our soul is a thing which is now separated from the center. So that cannot be the original source. You remember the previous state where we said that, of course, a guru can transmit, but they can only transmit their own limited state of being. So then the question comes, can an Abhyasi transmit? Yes, Abhyasi can also transmit from their own limited state of being. Then what is the difference between the transmission of an Abhyasi versus a preceptor? The preceptor transmits directly the transmission he receives from the guru. It's coming from the source. Abhyasi has no access to the source. So the Abhyasi cannot transmit the original transmission. Although their own limited sense of being, they can transmit. Every human being can transmit their own sense of being. Whether they meditate or not, that doesn't matter. It is happening all the time. Okay? I don't know whether I actually answered you or made you more confused.
Yes. Yes.
These are all very important, subtle points. So most of the people don't pay attention. Every Abhyasi has a power to transmit. Transmit what? Their own state of being. So even though an Abhyasi might not be a preceptor, to the extent that the Abhyasi has evolved, to that extent they can influence other Abhyasis. They will not be able to transmit the original transmission coming from the source because the transmission is not flowing from the source to them, from the guru. That's the reason why in our system, the permission from the master to work as preceptor is paramount. Then when you become preceptors, we'll discuss how does that work occur. But that permission is paramount. Once the permission is given, a connection is established between the preceptor and the master. And that is when the preceptor is able to receive the transmission directly from the master and impart it to the Abhyasi. Okay? So today's session is very, very subtle and a lot of finer points are discussed. It's very, very useful to know all these things. And then we also discuss why the difference between perceptors in terms of the sitting and the effectiveness of the sitting. All these things are an important part of the journey. All of us experience it. We take sitting from one person, then we take sitting from somebody else, then we take sitting from the third person. You will see that the experience will be different. But we don't know why the experience is different. This is the reason. ಸರಿ ಸರಿ ಮುಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗೋಣ ಅಂದ್ರೆ but in that case, shouldn't we receive transmission automatically without having to meditate? I asked. A farmer must prepare the field if he has to be benefited by the rain, said Daji. Nature it is as it is, and so we attune ourselves to it. That is why we practice. That's the fourth maxim that we read. Simplify your life so as to be in tune with nature. Why? If you are in tune with nature, you will be able to tap into the transmission more easily. Gopal Krishna, connection between yesterday's and today's lesson. Fourth maxim is simplify your nature, simplify your life so as to be in tune with nature. If you simplify your life and you are in tune with nature, what happens? You will receive the transmission automatically. By which means is the divine impulse transmitted into our hearts? I asked. What do you mean? Said Daji. Take sound, for example. Sound requires a medium that can vibrate, such as air or water. Does transmission also require any kind of medium in order to reach us? In Yoga Vasishtha, it is said by means of sight, by means of word, by means of touch, by means one can infuse a divinity in the disciple and enlighten him is indeed the real guru, said the Daji. In many yogic stories, we hear of situations in which a guru's mere glance at the disciple thereby awakening him. In the Sufi tradition, it is common for the sheikh to gently touch the chest of the aspirant in order to infuse their heart with spiritual energy. But in our way, we do not use any of these methods. We do not use physical touch. We don't need a guru or a trainer to look at us. We don't need them to speak to us as well. Hence, transmission flows unseen. But is it not unfelt? Its medium is thought. So, in our system, it is thought. So, thought, touch, uh, talk, and eye contact. Four things. Four ways in which you can use transmission. So 3T plus E. 3TE. Touch, thought, touch, talk, and eye contact. That means seeing. You see, the trainer merely thinks of transmission and it begins to flow. But at times it flows automatically without the trainer even thinking about it. In that case, what would be the medium be? Anyway, somehow something only requires a medium if it has to travel somewhere. But transmission reaches the target instantaneously. Even light cannot travel instantly. If transmission can traverse any distance in zero time, its velocity must be infinite. This is because it comes directly from the infinite source, which is in all places at once without being in any particular place in particular. Can you see that? The contradiction. So we were talking about a fraction. In a fraction, if you make the denominator zero, the answer will be infinite. Right? Likewise, in transmission, the transmission is everywhere. It will reach instantly because it is there everywhere. You just need to become a bit focused. That's all. That's all transmission is. So I want you to ponder on this particular point because these are all very important questions that you'll get in the exams about transmission. So we think that light is fastest. What is faster than light? Mind. What is faster than mind? Transmission. So this is a sequence. So light, then mind, and transmission. Okay.
How mind is faster
How
than
mind is faster than light. So nobody has done it, but this is what the tradition says. The mind is faster than light. Light requires a medium. For example, when we talk about sunlight, it takes some time for the sunlight to come here. But the mind can immediately think of sunlight in 1 second. It doesn't take much time for the mind to go. For example, you have 25 years before you. If I ask you to go behind and look at your life 25 years before, you will immediately go back 25 years in an instant. It doesn't take much time. So mind is very fast compared to light. Of course, you need to experiment. Nobody has done an experiment, scientific experiment to prove that mind is faster than light. I'm just telling you from the scriptures. So what is faster than light? This is one of the, I think, extra prashne that Yudhishthira is asked. You remember that pond? The Pandavas go to drink water and they don't take permission from this Yaksha who is there. Yaksha is the Yama. And everyone says, why should I take permission to drink this water? I'm going to drink anyway, and then they all fall dead. Then ultimately Yudhishthira answers all the questions. One of the questions that asked the Yama asks as a Yaksha is, what is faster than mind? Light. Then Yudhishthira answers that as a mind. Nobody has actually grasped the speed with which the mind functions. Okay. So let's just finish this part and then end it. Seekers start the heartfulness practices by meditating along with a trainer, also known as preceptor, who triggers the transmission on their behalf. These transmission sessions are called as sittings. Sittings can take place in person. They can also happen remotely when the trainer and the aspirant meditate at the same time in different places. The role of the trainer does not end with after the initial sittings. Rather, trainers continue to be available for ongoing sittings. Ideally, the aspirant takes a few sittings per month from the trainer. The main purpose of taking the ongoing sittings with the trainer is to provide us with opportunities to receive transmission. This supplements our daily individual sadhana. Our daily practice also helps us digest and absorb the transmission we receive during sittings. Please underline this. Our daily practice also helps us digest and absorb the transmission that we receive during sittings. So they complement one another. You take sittings, get transmission, come back home, do your practice, digest and absorb the transmission. If you don't do the practice, you will not be able to digest and absorb the transmission. Trainers are not selected because of their degree of advancement. This is another question for exam. How are trainers selected for in our heartfulness practices? Trainers are not selected because of their degree of advancement. They are chosen based on their willingness to serve and their knowledge of the heartfulness approach. Underline this. They need not be a very more advanced abhyasi than the seekers they are serving. They are volunteers performing a certain service, just like any other aspirant. Trainers must also practice daily and take regular sittings from other trainers. So trainers are also abhyasis only. So they don't have a special hat to wear. Okay. Okay, now we'll pause. It's coming up to 7:13. I thought I have to finish before 7:15. I'm 2 minutes ahead of time. So you can ask any questions. Today's session, lot of nuances are there. So please make some time and listen to it again. There are a lot of finer points we have covered, which has a lot of practical implications in the way that you look at your own practice. Bharat has become serious. Gopal Krishna has disappeared. Only Sudha sister and